Brett Ullman is a friend of mine, and he is most importantly a follower of Jesus, which makes him our brother. And he is married to Dawn. He's the father of 2 kids, a young man and a young woman. And he is a former educator, but he still educates. He goes around to local churches and teaches and communicates. He has a beautiful book table at the back, or resources that you might want to check out before you go, but you'll learn more about that before our Sunday gathering is over. But he's also a registered psychotherapist, which is a wonderful thing, isn't it? It is. Kristen, you and I think it's a wonderful thing. Yeah. So Brett, you know what? They're with you today. They'll be with you. They're not with me right now, but that's okay. And one thing that's really I love about Brett is he sits in a chair when he preaches and teaches. Isn't that amazing? A pastor who sits on a stool or a chair when they preach and teach. I love that. Something beautiful about that. I absolutely love it. Anyway, listen, would you put your hands together, give a very warm welcome to Brett Ullman.
It's interesting. There's very few churches I come to. I'm wandering around earlier, and I looked in a bit of the old building, and I suddenly had memories. As a teenager growing up in Pickering, there were these Sunday night events, and I remember being here again and again over those years. So it's always interesting when memories pop up. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name's Brett. I come from Ajax, which was a wonderful drive to get here. Often I'm driving across the city. As Dave said, my background is education. I've been a speaker for 28 years. 9 years of that, I was a teacher with the Toronto District School Board. And the last almost 3 years of that, I've been working in the psychotherapy field. But I have had a chance for a long time to travel through Canada and a bit of the US, speaking on issues that I think we either don't like, don't know how to, or don't want to talk about. So parenting, mental health, which I had a chance to speak a number of years ago right here. Today is my new talk on marriage. I have one on media. I speak on pornography and many other things, men being one of those topics. I am someone who sits. The other week someone said, are you the sitting speaker? And I'm like, I don't know if I want that. Yes, I did a master's degree 13 years ago at a school called Wheaton in Chicago, and I was speaking 275 to 300 speaking dates a year to pay for it, which was unsustainable. I graduated and had a breakdown at Lakeshore Pentecostal Camp, some of you know that, and I didn't work for an entire year. And so 13 years later, I still don't sleep very well, and I'm a speaker who struggles with anxiety, and I've learned if I sit, I'm calm. So I have the weirdest rider in the world. Can you find me a really nice chair? And this one is wonderful. I am married with 2 kids. My wife's name is Dawn. She is here today. She's a nurse. I have 2 kids. My son's And why isn't this moving? Helps if you have the remote thing in. So I'll just do this. So my wife's name is Dawn. My son's name is Ben, and he just graduated from Queen's, and he's hoping to head into psychotherapy next year. My daughter Zoe just finished a gap year after graduating from Mac, and she actually heads to law school up in Lakehead in September. Our favorite family member, though, is actually Phoebe. She's the best part of each of our days, and I just like to put a picture of her up. So I have a short period of time today to do a talk which is very new to me. You are actually the first Canadian church I've ever spoken this to, and you're the only third time I've ever actually spoken it. So I do this talk today with an open hand. I'd love to know thoughts, ideas, quotes I could use, what I did right, what I did wrong, and my email's on my table. I'll be here out back. But I will say this, I'm very sensitive to the fact that in this audience there are many people with many differing situations. Married, single, dating, divorced, widowers, people in good marriages, and people in terrible marriages, and everything in between. And this discussion is for all of us to learn better patterns on marriage, and these principles will often help in all aspects of relationships. And there will be a lot of information. At the very end of the talk, though, I'm going to give you a single challenge. What is one thing I said today that you're like, that's for me? And I tell you now so you can begin to think about that. If I asked you the question, what would you say are the joys, privileges, or benefits of a good marriage? I wonder what you would say. I have 10 things. 1 is it's a religious and a spiritual significance. 2 is this idea of a sense of belonging, of a friend for life. 3 is a deepened intimacy. Marriage often allows for a deeper level of both emotional and physical intimacy. Family building, economic stability, social and cultural institutions. It's this idea of shared responsibilities. We'll talk about that in a minute. A travel partner, legal protection, improved health and longevity. Studies are very clear that married people are healthier and live longer than other people, and often they just say it's due to the emotional support, the shared responsibilities, and these healthier lifestyles. And it's also the idea of personal development. But I don't know why often that the narrative of a healthy marriage isn't one we hear very much. We don't talk about marriage in a positive light. The idea of, you hear the wife, the ball and chain. Look at sitcoms. Husbands are usually buffoons, right? The way we put forth people is not in a good light, and sometimes even sermons. And it's not just the narrative we speak of, but it's sometimes we also see modeled for us a lot of really bad marriages. For me, it's a joy to share my life with my wife. But all we seem to talk about in life is how hard marriage is, and the suffering you will have in marriage, and you'll have to stay in marriage even if it's hard, because you can only get divorced for these reasons. And I would just say this, if it's hard, you need some help. And it's okay to say we're not okay, and it's okay to get some help in these conversations. Your partner should make life easier. So what is today? This is to get you thinking of marriage. This is a moment. Dan and Chip Heath have a book called The Power of Moments, and your faith, and your marriages, and your relationships, all these things are built in moments. And it's a little bit of a challenge. It is not, though, a marriage intensive, like Family Life Canada or Focus. It's not a marriage course like Alpha's Marriage or Alpha's Pre-Marriage. By the way, both are really good. You can find these online. It's not a marriage book, even though I will give you a whole bunch of books to read. And it's not couples counseling, but if you are one of my clients, you might hear a lot of these same things I'm giving you today. And some of these things might be some of the next logical steps. Now, this is an interesting thing to say, but having a Christian faith does not equal having a great marriage. I wish it did. You can be a Christian and be horrible at communication, conflict, have poor emotional regulation, have poor mental health, be abusive, be disconnected, have bad self-care, and many other things. Just very matter of fact, you can be a Christian and be a horrible partner in marriage, but it does not have to stay this way. I always think of marriage as a plant. It's thriving, it's wilting, it's dead. And sometimes, when there's things like affairs, it's like cutting it off at the root and starting again, a new pot. Marriage 2.0, I might say, and rebirth. And there is hope in all of this. Sometimes, though, when we get married, we look so happy and have our lives ahead of us, and then something changes, and I don't know what it is. And maybe it's just the simple idea of that plant doesn't get watered anymore. And some plants last a long time not being watered, but they begin to wilt, and maybe we just need to water our plant a little more. So I am extremely pragmatic, and so when I began to look at a talk for marriage, I'm like, what do I do? And so I created what I'm just going to call a flywheel, and I posted this on my website just this week, so you can go and find this later. These are not a perfect roadmap, but when you read books on marriage and videos and courses, and for me, this is what I also see in couples counseling, these are the things that I think you can look at. And in a relationship, you can rate yourself on a 1 to 10, and not only do you rank yourself, also rank a trajectory. Am I getting better or am I getting worse? And then somebody will say, well, where does our faith play a role? And I would say, if these are pieces of a pie, your faith is the pie tin, right? It's the worldview we look at our values and actions through, so it's the pie tin of all of it. Now, if you've ever looked at relationships, many of us, especially in the therapy world, we use the Gottman Institute, and they have this really great house they use where marriage is built on trust and commitment and begins with what they call love maps, which is just knowing one another, all the way through to shared meaning and dreams. Every book I promote, by the way, I have on my website. I'll tell you at the very end how to go and find it. Focus on the Family also has a really great model. I use this with a lot of my clients. This is the idea of two people. The dotted line is your own self-care. You're each building into the circle in the middle is your relationship, and you're each faith-based people, each building into your faith. And if you're with me in a couple session right now, I would say, so what do you see? What do you see you might be struggling with in your relationship? But one of the most important things in marriage is to take care of yourself and to have good overall health. Jordan Peterson, and I'm not talking anything political, but Jordan says if we each live properly, we will collectively flourish. Part of being an adult is taking personal responsibility for yourself. You can only have a healthy marriage if you're working at being a healthy person. Being unhealthy overall will affect the health of your marriage, and this is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So this morning we're going to go through 8 categories. each of these pieces of the pie, I have a verse, and then we're going to walk through a quick discussion on it and give you some takeaway conversations. So the number one thing I deal with in couples counseling is this: the idea of how to manage our households. And much of the issue is this: it has not been discussed, and there are unsaid expectations. And no discussion says something. There's a quote that someone once wrote: resentment grows out of perceived unfairness. Now, here's my catch-22. How do I challenge us to be better today without shaming and condemning any of us for where we're at? And it's Maya Angelou, social activist and poet, who once said, do the best you can until you know better, and then the rest of it, and when we know better, we do better. We want the best as couples, the best for our community and everything else in our families. All the research here, though, is very clear. It is not fair in our homes, and all the research is also very clear. It is women who have more on their plate than men do. And so for the men in the room, it's just about making sure that this is not you. And if it is, how can we become a little bit better? So some definitions. Things like domestic labor is just the household management. A mental load is a to-do list. If you don't think about things, you do not carry the mental load. Who buys the toothpaste? Who signs the kids' forms for school? Who waters the flowers? If you don't know, then you are not the default person for that. Second shift, invisible labor, emotional labor. There's lots of language. And Joyce Meyer once wrote this in one of her books. Wash the dinner dishes, set out the cereal for the morning prep, the coffee pot, put meat out of the freezer, fill the dog's water dish, let out the cat, put wet clothes in the dryer, empty the wastebasket, lock the doors, look in on the kids, write a quick letter to the teacher, lay out clothes, wash and moisturize her face, and then add 3 more things to her to-do list for the next day. Meanwhile, her husband turns off the TV and announces to no one in particular, I'm going to bed, and without doing anything else, he does. This is not all men. It is not. But make sure it is not you. I hear this all the time on a weekly basis as a couples counselor. Now, I'm going to bed often is a bid for an invitation for sex, and she has things to do, and he is ticked off, and she's exhausted, and he becomes something on her to-do list. Sometimes intimacy struggles are the result of an unbalanced household. Someone's just carrying too much of the load, and it's taxing them, and we'll talk more about that in the intimacy section. But I love this simple question: do you both have the same amounts of free time? If not, reestablish the domestic load. John Gottman talks about 3 ways we engage ever. You either turn towards, you turn away, or you turn against. Ask good questions. Be curious. When someone says, I feel it's imbalanced, don't turn against and be angry. Don't turn away, but turn towards and say, I love you. I'm so sorry. Tell me more about this. How can we engage in this conversation better? And there is a wonderful book and a deck of cards you can get. And I would just say, saying, just tell me what you want me to do is helpful, but not helpful enough as the other person is still carrying the load. They're still the default. I read somewhere, every woman's love language is not having to ask. Just going to leave that one. There's always a lot of quiet, I'm going to assume, after it. But where can you improve? Where can we be better? Intimacy. Emotional, sexual, intellectual, spiritual, experiential, creative, recreational. One of the questions I often ask in couples therapy is, what are your rituals of connection? Where do you connect with each other? The most common answer, I don't know. And then they go, oh, we love watching shows. Now, let's just be upfront. If we had to rank all the ways that grows intimacy in a relationship, watching TV would be the bottom. Maybe we could go one step lower. It's watching TV while we send reels to each other, which we still do, but I'm just saying this can't be it. So for intimacy, let's look at 2 things. One is safety and trust. 1 Corinthians, you know this. Love is what? Patient, kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, is not proud. A good marriage is safe and it's healthy. A healthy marriage allows you to express your thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment or retaliation. A healthy marriage does not have instances of violence or threats of violence in your relationship. A healthy marriage has boundaries that are honored and you feel your autonomy is respected. A healthy marriage has transparency and trust in the areas of finances, and you feel secure in your future financial amount together. A healthy marriage has conflicts that are resolved in a constructive manner without manipulation or aggression. Do you see the concept here? If you are not a safe partner, you need to understand why. And a good counselor can help you walk through these things. Dr. Gary Smalley says, when two people truly feel safe together, their hearts will naturally open. And when two open hearts are in close proximity to each other, intimacy happens without force, without effort, and without energy. So safety and trust. And the second would just be this idea of emotional connection. There's a book called The Boy Crisis, and in it they just have a really great quote. The internal security and emotional intelligence of a loving marriage becomes your children's best inheritance. It's a very interesting question that I have to say to all my clients, which is, how are you with feelings? And most people go, what do you mean? And I'm like, how are you with feelings? And often there isn't much of an answer. How are you feeling? It's kind of a simple question. And one great thing is just Google the feelings wheel. Every therapist uses these. There's like 7 pieces of the pie in the middle. Those are the main ones. But like the red one is anger. We would say it's like an iceberg. You're angry. And then we look at kind of the other levels. You feel hurt or abandoned. And I like this. Now, I used to say notice, name, normalize, and be kind to yourself. I like the word kind, and people were like, no, I want 4 N's, make it all uniform, and so I've changed it to nice. Notice what you're feeling. Name it. Normalize it. Are there things happening in your life? Are you going through grief from a death? Or are you struggling in a relationship as a parent? Like whatever it might be, but normalize it, and then be kind to yourself. And this safety and trust and emotional connection builds a foundation for sexual intimacy, which is what we all kind of want to talk about, but rarely do. Chip Ingram once said, we long to love and we long to be loved, but we just don't seem to know how to do it very well. And for all the talk and openness there is about sex today, sexuality still ranks as one of the persistent points of conflict in most relationships. Now, intimacy is not sex. It's kind of the part of the outpouring of it, and sex requires vulnerability and honest communication. I heard a quote once from an author named Jay Springer, and he says this. Jay says, learning about sex in church is like going to a culinary school and only learning about food poisoning. It's one of those quotes I sat back and I'm like, yes. Only the bad and never talking about the good. Having a good sex life is all about understanding what we might call accelerator and brakes. Think of a car. Some things, like the ones on the screen, are sex life killers. They put the brakes on, and we kind of want to make it kind of brakes and accelerators. Now, there's a lot here. This is simple to say. Sometimes it's harder to deal with. There's addictions. There's poor sleep. There's kids. There's hormone issues. There's menopause, andropause, mental health struggles, health issues, overwork, lack of balance, and it's always individualized. But how will you know this? You need to talk openly and honestly in relationships. I challenge couples to have a weekly meeting, usually every Sunday night, where you kind of talk about the head and the heart. The head is what are we doing this week, right? What are the plans, who's cooking, all these things, and then kind of the heart. What do you need from me? Now, I will say this. I think we need a whole new paradigm on how we talk about the topic of sex. I would put forth what we're doing isn't working. We have young kids. I got a grant years ago. We polled 10,000 Canadian Christians on their discussions with their parents on pornography and sexuality. 90% said it was never addressed. We had high school. Usually in the church world, it's 2 sessions a year in a conversation on sex. Most high school kids come out 50% of the time, so they might get 1. Then we become a young adult, which from our paradigm of faith and sexuality, this is when kids mess up the most. They're away at school, they just have the ability when they're away. And then we get married, which we'd now say, now you're free to be sexually active, and we will now never talk about sex again the rest of your entire life. If I said, let's design something that will fail, that's what I would design. And maybe the question is with this, have we actually learned anything? And talking about this in marriage and about the differences we have in sex drives and expectations is really important. My wife and I have really found the author Sheila Wray Gregoire to be this refreshing voice in this kind of space. She wrote a book called The Great Sex Rescue. Christian books about marriage and sex often do not have any research or backing behind them to be accurate. They come with their own implicit biases and are very often incredibly harmful. So what do you read on sex? And I might actually ask another question. What do you read? New research on Canadians says 57% of Canadians read 0 books this year. 0. If you read 5 pages a day, you'll read around 3 to 4 books a year. Now, you can't read this, but this is where all the books on sex and marriage she put through a rubric and ranked. And it's just interesting. The red is really bad. And so it's just making sure that what we're learning is helpful and not hurting. So just some thoughts as we close this one. In the book, What Makes Love Last, they say too often couples learn to parrot the right words, but don't anchor their talks in a profound understanding of each other. And trust, healing is an art. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes love. And just a few easy takeaways. Please have some check-ins. If you like kind of thinking on relationships each week, just Google the Marriage Minute by John Gottman. You'll find this 2 times a week kind of thing that will come out. And there's 2 apps you can use. One is called Card Deck. There's just these questions that you can use. And another one my wife and I have been just trying out, but it's called the Paired app, which is one that you and your partner can use, and you can answer questions even when you're not together. And a couple good books, and these are all online for you as well. Number 3, communication. I have to be honest, I think every couple who's ever come to me says we're struggling with communication. In the book Boundaries in Marriage, another very good one, they say the marriage relationship needs other ingredients to grow and thrive. Those ingredients are freedom and responsibility. When 2 people are free to disagree, they're free to love. And when they're not free, they live in fear and love dies. And of course, 1 John, perfect love drives out fear. There's something that Gottman uses called the Rappaport intervention, which is a very weird name, but the goal here is very simple. It's that you feel understood by each other. And parents, this is something you should do in your parenting as well. The analogy is just called the talking stick. It does have roots in indigenous culture, but the idea is this. Whoever holds, like if an elder's holding a stick, everyone else is quiet and listens to the elder. But here's how it goes in a relationship. If there's something you need to talk about, sit down. And then you're not going to have a talking stick, but have the talking whatever, Kleenex box, phone, cup, it doesn't matter. But whoever has that is the person speaking, and the other person has one goal. You need to listen. Because when that person's finished, you need to say back to them, what I hear you saying is, and say it back to them. Again, parents, this works for your kids. And they may look at you and say, yes, but they might look at you and say, no. And then you say, tell me again. And once it's finished, you pass the whatever it is to the other person, and then they get to say their few minutes, and you get to learn about what each other's thinking. It's Stephen Covey who talks about the idea of we listen to respond, we don't listen to understand. I really like this. And a very simple question is just, do you need me to give advice or just listen? Like it's just a singular line that often someone just might need to vent. And if you're not great with communication, it's okay. But find ways to help. Now, you can go on ChatGPT and just type in questions. But Talking Point, this is a faith-based company, and they have books for couples, and I put ones on the side for kids and teens, and they have one just called Christian as well. So communication and conflict are very kind of paired. And I love in Ephesians it says, in your anger, do not sin. Sometimes people come to me and say, we don't have conflict. And I would say that's not always a good thing. Is someone just being compliant to the other person's wishes and resentment is growing? Like unmet expectations are future resentments. You have to think through that. But if every time there's a resentment, it's like a pebble going in a backpack, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, that backpack is getting really full. But the goal is not arguing, but learning to disagree respectfully. And if you do argue, you repair faster. Now, I'm assuming at some point in your faith-based life, you've read through the book of Revelation, you've read through the 4 horsemen. Gottman talks about this idea that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is this metaphor depicting the end of the times, which is in Revelation 6. They describe conquest, war, hunger, and death, respectively. Now, we use this metaphor to describe communication styles that, according to their research, can predict the end of a relationship. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Now, you can go home and Google this. You will find a lot of really great material. I have a book at the end where you can actually look at this later. But there's very singular topics that people argue about. Housework, sex, parenting, in-laws, finances would be the norm. And I love this. Conflict is not about winning. It's about resolving an issue. If you and your partner, your best friend in this world, are having an argument and one of you loses, you lost. You lost as a couple. The goal is to together figure out and win, right? Find a solution to it. It's Zig Ziglar, what a great name, by the way, who once said, many marriages would be better if people clearly understood that they're on the same side. Your spouse is not your enemy. Gary Smalley says, personal responsibility takes place when your buttons get pushed and you have an emotional reaction, yet you stay focused on your side of the equation. You must take responsibility for your feelings and fears as well as responsibility for your reactions. So what do you do for this? This book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, is a wonderful book. You can actually buy a side book which has the biblical verses and principles that you can lay over top of this. But I make all my couples as a therapist go through the reactive cycle. This is actually reactivecycle.com. This is a free online thing from Focus on the Family. Here's what the idea would be. So I'm going to use this couple, Jim and Pam. If you watch The Office, that's why I use this. So when Jim has his buttons pushed, I just circled here, he feels disrespected. So Pam does something and Jim feels disrespected. So what happens? He has a reaction. So Jim, for this case, he shuts down. Well, when Jim shuts down, Pam now feels unimportant. That's pushed her button. So what does she does? Well, she does this, yes, but, well, I know I did this, but you did this, which makes Jim feel what? Disrespected. Can you see the cycles that we all have? Everyone laughs as we put this out and they put their last few arguments through it. It's just free online and you can all do it, but you need to do any of these things with like an open hand, right? It's this, let's get better at this. Once you understand this, you'll be ready to accept one of the most surprising truths about marriage. Most marital arguments cannot be resolved. Couples spend year after year trying to change each other's mind, and I would say often it can't be done. This is because most of their disagreements are rooted in fundamental differences of lifestyle, personality, or values. By fighting over these differences, all they succeed in doing is wasting their time and harming their marriage. So those are the big ones. Now we come across kind of the bottom, as I say. So family. And family would be both parenting and maybe in-laws and extended family. But the idea, I love Psalms here, it's reminding us to view our children as blessings and not burdens. Now, I could do an entire day of parenting conversations, and I have an entire talk on this on Right Now Media called Parenting Navigating Everything, but 2 slides. In the book Trophy Child, the pastor Ted Cunningham says, "They will not be with me forever, so I prepare them accordingly." There's weight to this. And it's the idea of raising your kids to, right, the 0 to 18 is kind of those ages. And if they head off to college, university, the workforce, whatever it might be, have you prepared them accordingly? And Julie Lythcott-Hames has one of the most popular TED Talks. She used to be the Dean of Admissions from Stanford University. She said this, "Why did parenting change? From preparing our kids for life to protecting them from life, which means they're not prepared to live life on their own." This was the 1990s parenting shift where we shifted from those styles to more what we call paranoid, fear-based parenting styles. So what do we do from this? I have a massive handbook on this, and from an extended family conversation, we're not walking into that a lot, but just the idea of boundaries. And the first one is a faith-based book, and the second one is not, but just 2 really, really good books. Finances. You know, keep your lives free from the love of money. And very simply, it's just living within your means and being a good steward of what you have. I do think a relationship is put to a very tough test when the couple faces financial issues. How you and your partner respond to a financial crisis is an important discussion, and I would say prevention's probably one of the biggest things here. David once said, "The handling of finances is one of the major emotional battlegrounds in any marriage." I was trying to figure out, what do you do here in just a quick slide? And I'm like, Dave Ramsey's pretty good at this. I think there's some differences from an American to Canadian paradigm, but the truth is, all people who talk about finances, it's the idea of earn more, save more, and give more. And there are limits to this. I'm not perpetuating forever earning more, working 90 hours a week. I'm not saying that, but earn more, save more, so that we can give more. And have a plan as a couple, budget. Fun. The Gottman Institute basically says this: you can do all the couples therapy, read all the books, and everything can be great, but if you don't have fun together, you're probably in trouble. There's something about just enjoying time together. And they find that couples who have fun, they report this higher relationship satisfaction. When I ask a couple, what do they do for fun? It's funny, I get the same answer. We watch shows. And I'm just saying, there's many other things we can do, which people would usually push back. Well, do we have to do a date night? It's so expensive. And I would say, I agree, but it's how we frame and view date night. I often hear, and it's incredible how many times I hear this in sermons, the 7-7-7 rule. Every 7 nights, a date night. like literally going out and having a date night. Every 7 weeks, a night away, and every 7 months, a romantic holiday. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, if you have young children, every week having a night out, like $75 for dinner, $40 for a movie. I don't know how much babysitting costs anymore, but like, you're talking hundreds of dollars to go out. And so age and stage matters here. But dating could mean going for a walk, a hike. It could mean dinner out, but it might mean dinner in. If you have young children, one person puts the kids to bed and the other one cooks a dinner, and you come downstairs and have dinner together and you talk, and there's no TV, but anything better to connect, and it may be travel as well. And fun, have a good community. You're a good church community, right? I love watching everyone come in and hug and laugh and talk to each other, and then have really good friends. And I'm fortunate to have some of my best friends here today. And friends are good, right? There's something so important about friends. And have couple friends, and then it's also okay to have friends you go out and do other things with as well. And the last one here is very simply just the idea of purpose. And why it fits, it just encourages couples to discover this idea of shared calling and this idea of mission together. That house we looked at, like the Gottman house, the top of it is this idea of shared meaning. Now, if you're struggling in your relationship, I don't think we start here, where there's work to be done. And by the way, for everything I've said today, I work for a place called Life Care Centers. Our executive director, Scott Armstrong, says this often: where there is resistance, there is work. So if I said anything and you had that little bit of frustration, maybe a bit of anger, I love that line. Where there's resistance, there's work. But what might purpose be for you? Is it faith? Is it family? Is it volunteering? Is it work? I mean, Matthew 22, love God, love others. Let's just paraphrase. Where do you put your time, your money, and your effort? Something that brings you life and meaning outside of your life and family. And if you have young kids, your purpose right now might be family. It might be children, giving that good foundation. I know my wife and I and a number of other couples go to the refuge a couple times a month and serve dinner to teenagers experiencing homelessness right here in Oshawa. But even better, doing these things when you're a couple. It's unifying and seeing and appreciating your partner. And other things. I mean, my wife and I have always said we want to have a great marriage, and then we want to have and really equip our children, supporting them through their university years, and now as we head into this new kind of season of post-grad years. So now what? I'm often called a shotgun speaker. I think it's a fair idea. Fire hose is the same word. It's a lot of information. Growing up, you'd get these small Easter eggs, and you'd open them up, and there'd be all those sticky animals in it. Anybody remember this? And you'd throw them against a wall, and a whole bunch of them would fall down. They'd usually kind of walk down, but a few of them would stick, and that's kind of the idea of today. Sarah Bessey says this: so you may need to learn how to have a healthy, grown-up marriage together. We strongly encourage marriage counseling because therapy isn't just for the sheer emergency level crisis, but it can be. But it can provide good tools for conflict resolution, making decisions, exploring your questions together, and relearning intimacy. Accept the truth that you don't have to be 100% in agreement on everything to have a good marriage. Proverbs 13, where there's strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. So where do you go? I think this is a really simple way to start. My website's just my name. It's brettallman.com. It's literally going to be one of the main things you see on it right now, and score it separately. Can I just say, when you do score it separately, ask good questions. People often, someone's more of a half empty, one's more of a half full. My wife's more half full, I'm a more of a half empty person. So I might rank something lower, she might rank it higher. We still might be the same, but it's ask good questions. Some resources, and then we're done. My parenting book is a handbook, and so there's 7 chapters literally on parenting. One in that is on family discipleship, and then there's 9 mini books. Realizing people aren't reading a lot. I'm realizing people aren't going to buy a book on mental health and media and pornography and alcohol use and loneliness. And so it's all of that in one. It's on Audible. I read it myself. I'm actually frustrated. The book is 23 3/4 hours long. All I needed was 15 minutes, and I could have said it's one day if I had just read it a little bit slower. But for the parents, I also have this online course, and you can find that on Right Now Media, which your church has. If you're like, I don't know where to start with this very first book here by John Gottman, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Remember back when I talked about Sheila Wray Gregoire and there was that ranking? This book was green all the way. It was like 5s on everything. It's a really, really great book. Not faith-based, and you can add our faith-based principles underlying it, but it is an amazing book. Some other ones I put up were the one on trust. Fair Play is a really great conversation on household management. And then a few books on boundaries. Boundaries are a very important conversation that we often don't talk about. I have my talks on pornography, my talk on dating for life, the questions, which is really made for students, but it's online. And I do have a talk called Men Navigating Everything, also on Right Now Media, and my brand new talk on media itself will be coming out in the next month or so. So all the books you can find are on my website. Realizing I'm a speaker who comes and speaks very quickly on a lot of different things, I want to be able to equip you beyond today. So my website has 1,500 links on it, all categorized: marriage, mental health, parenting, whatever topic it might be. If you click that top arrow, it's the Amazon A right in the middle of all my social media. That will take you to my Amazon shop with books categorized in every category. And this says parenting navigating everything right here, but I'm just creating a marriage navigating everything take home so that there will be every link and every main thought will be there online. 2 slides and we're done. Martin Luther King Jr. once said this: "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." Small steps. There's a book called Atomic Habits, which is one of my favorite books to suggest to people, because it's the idea of, if this is where you want to be and this is where you are, just start here. Like, what is the most simple thing that you could do? And no matter where and how your relationship is today, you can do something about where you are. And there is hope. I hope this doesn't come across as a fear-based conversation, but a hope, that there is hope in all of these conversations. But we need to do things differently. Alan Watts, an author, once said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." I love that. In any aspect of life, you're under no obligation to be who you were 5 minutes ago. So, now what? I said at the beginning, I'm going to end with the singular quote, and I always kind of do this idea from John Maxwell. He says this: "When you are challenged by anyone, ever, on anything, choose one thing." What is one thing I said today? And as the person at the front, I can see your heads tilt a little bit. I can see you talk to your partner, so I can see those moments, and whatever that might be, choose that thing. But here's the hard part, he says: whatever you choose, you only have 3 days to do something about it. So today's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'll give you Wednesday night. But by Wednesday night, if you haven't, gotten to that place and made some small change in your life, because you are your habits and your rituals, if you haven't done it, statistically, you never will. And the goals of these moments are the idea of like a catalyst, right? It's like a spark, to spark and push us forward in whatever aspect we're talking about. Today, looking at the idea of marriage, but I find in a talk like this, there's so much you can pull out of this, from mental health to parenting or anything else. I mentioned this at the beginning. Dan and Chip Heath have a book called The Power of Moments, and it's the idea of that our life and faith, and today the idea of marriage is built on moments. And I hope it's been a moment to make you think maybe a little bit differently about this idea of marriage. After the service, I'll be back by my booth. I'll stay and chat as long as anybody wants to, and if you want to just take my card or find me online, I answer all my own messages. Thank you so much for the chance to do a talk like this. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.